So we have our carousel all set up, and now we need to add our styles to match our Photoshop design. So first we add in our slider comment into our style sheet to keep our code clean and easy to find if we need to make any changes later on. Then if we just jump over to our Photoshop file, the first thing we can do is add our main background image. So in our style sheet, to access our slider, we simply use the hashtag, and then the slider name, as this connects us to our ID that we set up earlier. Now to set the background image, we simply add the background property and add in the URL. So in our case, it will be our location in our folder structure. So as we're in our style sheet within our CSS folder, we need to come out of that, which we do with 2 dots, and then we go back into our image folder, and our image name is bg.jpg. Now to make sure that the image stretches and fills the screen, especially on the wide screens, we simply add the width property and give this a value of 100%. And to make sure that the image covers the whole section on all devices, we simply add the background size property and give this a value of cover. Now if we just save that off quickly and refresh our page, we can see the image has been applied, but it obviously doesn't look too great at the moment, but we'll fix that when we focus on our text. So we can see in our file that the font is the same all the way through the page. So what we can do is add an overall font style to all of our text. So if we just jump to the top of our style sheet, we simply add in the P tag in here, and then the H1 tag, and then our curly brackets. Then in here we just need to add the same style that we added for our navigation font. So we simply copy and paste that in. Then if we just save that and refresh, we can see our header font change. Now it still doesn't look quite right, so we'll just fix that now. So we need to change the font color and the size of our H1 tag. So to access our text within our carousel, we simply call the item class, as they house the individual bits of content for our slides. So in our style sheet we add the item class and we give that a property of color. And as our font is white, we'll add the hex color, which is FFF. And if we just save that and refresh to check, that all looks good. Now you'll also notice that our slides are actually located at the top of the page, so we'll just sort that out. We can easily adjust the slide content by adding the padding to our item. So we simply add the padding property, and again the values for this will add padding clockwise around the item. So we can try 200 pixels at the top, and then we can add in a 0 as we don't want any more around the item. So this should just shift it into a more suitable position. And you could have actually either added in padding or padding dash top and just added the 200 pixels. Either way it would have worked fine. So if we just save that off and refresh our page, we can see that that actually looks a lot better already. So feel free to have a play around the values if you like, so you can get a better understanding of how the padding works. And obviously we can finalize that value when we have all our other styles in place if we need to. Now we can see our H1 text here is a little too small. So if we just jump over to our style sheet, we can add the item class. And then the H1 tag. Then we simply add the font size property and give that a value of 3 just to see how that looks. Slightly too big, so we'll try 2.8. That looks about right. Now next we can style our indicators as they don't match what we have in our Photoshop design. So we can see that they need to be white rather than transparent, but also the gap between them is slightly larger than the default BootStrap carousel setting that we have. So first let's change our color. So to access our indicators we can access the carousel indicators class and then our list tag. So let's add those into our style sheet. Then to change the color we simply add the background-color property and give that a hex value of white. Then if we just save that off and refresh, we can see that they look better already. So we just need to adjust the spacing, which we can do with our margin property. So if we add that in, and we give this a value of 5 pixels, just save that off and refresh to see how it looks. That actually looks about right, apart from the active state, which needs to be a different colour, and we can sort that out now. So to access our active carousel state, we simply add in the carousel-indicator class, and then we give it the active state. Now if we jump to our PSD file, we can see that the colour of the active slide is the same green colour we used before. So if we just grab that colour again and head back to our style sheet, we can add in the background colour property and paste that value in. Now if we just save and refresh, we can see that the active state has changed to green, but we have this horrid white border wrapped around it. So we can fix that by adding our border property to our active class. Then we can give this a thickness of 1 pixels, and then we add the design, so we'll have solid. And then we simply choose our colour, so we can copy and paste the value from above. Now if we just save that off and check, that actually looks a lot better. Now we just need to add the same margin so it matches the other indicators. So we can add our margin property and give that a value of 5 pixels again. So if we just save that off and refresh, that should be our indicators sorted. Next we're going to move on to style our button. So if we look at our button, we can see the font is slightly too big and obviously the colour is the wrong green. So we can actually access these styles in our style sheet, and as we use the button success class, we can simply access that, and we can change the background colour with the background colour property. And as we want the same green again, we can simply copy and paste this colour in. And if we just save that off and refresh to check, we can see that there's another white border wrapped around the button. So again, we can add the border property and give that a same green colour value. And if we just check again, that looks a lot better. Now we can change the font size in here, so we can do that with the font size property. I think 0.8 should be enough for this. And again, if we save and refresh to check, we can see that the button size has also shrunk in here, so we can add some padding to make the actual button size we need. So we add the padding property, and the values that we actually need here are 10 pixels to the top and the bottom, and then 20 pixels on either side. So let's add those in. And again, if we just save and refresh, we can see that looks a lot better. However, you may notice that the button is slightly too close to the text above. So we can add in a margin property into the button class and give this a value of 15 pixels and then 0 again, just to make sure it doesn't go all the way around. And if we just save that again and refresh, we can see that it's almost complete. The final thing I'd like to do is just change the hover state for the button from this old green colour. So I'll add the button success class in again, and I'll add the hover state to this. Then you can add in the background colour property, which I'll make to black. Now you can choose whatever colour you like here, but I'll just try that and see how it looks. Then if we save that off and refresh our page, we can see our carousel is working well. Our background image fits nicely behind the navigation and the carousel, and our titles and buttons match our design, and so do our indicators. And if I just hover over the button here, we can see that the black background is applied. And if we shrink this down, we can see it looks good on these smaller devices as well. However, if we test our toggle navigation, we can see our navigation options seem to get lost. So we can actually add a background to this section to make it readable. So if we head back into our media queries within the style sheet, we can add our background color property to the nav class that's already in here. So what we can do is add the background property in. However, this time we can add in the RGBA color and give this a value of black, which is 3 zeros. Then we add a final value in, which is the opacity. So I'll just try 0.7 on here to see how it looks. So if I just save that off and refresh, that actually looks quite nice, but obviously feel free to play around with the opacity if you need more or less, depending on which background image that you've actually used. But one thing is that the logo is a little too close to the toggle border here, so what we can do is just shift that up slightly. So in the logo class of the media queries, if we change this to 13 pixels and try that, still not quite right, let's try 10 pixels. Yeah, that looks a lot better. It just separates the logo from the navigation slightly. So if we actually look at our header, that's the header section complete with a working carousel. Now next we're going to move on to building our About section or Features section, which we'll do in the next lecture.